Okay, so if it looks like I'm short of breath, I really am because the day was not being great. And so I decided I was going to do an impromptu dance off with myself. I did it, and I am short of breath because I haven't really rage danced in a while. So that's the news. Now let's get into what you all are here for, which is not why I'm dancing around in my pajamas alone in my room. Hello beautiful bookworms, my name is Katrina and welcome to my channel. And today I am bringing you a wrap up for the month of August, which I know is shocking, isn't it? Because I have been reading shit through all of these months and I haven't done a supposed wrap up for the month because I haven't read anything for the other months that would acquire me to do a wrap up. So I've done recent reads videos, but now I have read quite a lot. In my defense, most of the things that I have read this month were indeed mangas. But mangas count, mangas are books, mangas are fun, and they're awesome. And so I have a decent amount of things to wrap. So let's wrap because I want to talk about all of those things. So since I have read mostly mangas, I am going to wrap up the only actual book novel thing that I've read in August, which was A Conjuring of Light by V. Schwab. And this one, I had already started it in July. Let's go with July because I think July is the time. And so for that reason, obviously I was going to finish. I loved this book and I have been buddy reading this series with some friends and I know that one of them did not enjoy this. She did not finish this, but that's okay because we can all like the same things. But in what regards me, I was devastated. I loved this. And it also broke my heart into 1,000 pieces and then put it back together. And then it was awesome. And I don't know, it was so great. It was like the best ending for the series. And I have to say that the first and the second one were great, but this one was amazing. I really loved it. And the characters were all great. I don't know, I really love this. I love this. I love V. Schwab's writing style, and although I had some problems with the translation of it for the Portuguese edition, I sort of knew how it was supposed to go since I have read her other books like Vicious and Vengeful and City of Ghosts. I have read all of them in English, so I'm sort of mostly in an understanding of how her writing works, and so I knew sort of where she was going to. And I really love like some of the one-liners and some of the phrases and the plot points. I don't know, I really enjoyed it. The only thing that I didn't enjoy was the fate of my favorite character, because how the fuck do you dare? How do you dare? I don't know, but I was sad and I was like, but why? But regardless of that, because I don't want to spoil you if you haven't read this, amazing. Yes, I love it. I know that some people don't, but I really do. So that's all I have to say in the matter. Unless, of course, you want a detailed spoiler review in which I would be gushing and screaming and probably saying a lot of swear words. And if you want that, you can request that in the comments down below. So after reading that, I had a period where I read some comic issues and not manga volumes because they were smaller and I really need something small to focus on because I am actually writing a paper for my PhD, and so I don't have a lot of time to actually read big things. So the first comic issue that I've read is the 6th issue of the Ruby comics, which if you have seen any of my wrap-ups or book hauls up until now, you know that I am doing this collection. This, I don't really encourage people to pick this up without having watched the animation, which is the original form of the story of Ruby. And that animation is not an anime, it's an animation, it's in English. You can find it online and it's really great. It was created by Monty Hume, who sadly passed away, and it's about these girls and they live in a world that is being attacked by creatures of darkness called the Grimm, and they are basically going to this school in order to be apprentices and learn how to be huntresses for these monsters, so to protect their place, their city. But there's a lot of political and magical situations with this. There's a lot of characters, there's a lot of plot developments, and I really enjoy it. But these are sort of like, I like them, but they're sort of like an extra if you've watched the show, in my opinion, because it doesn't develop the original story, and so you wouldn't know how we got into this point since this starts like on season 4 of Ruby. like in the middle of the season. I have no idea. Like, I'm not exactly a timeline person, but that is it. And I don't know, I enjoy it. It's nice, it's fun. If it's my favorite comic, it's not, but it's fun. It's really fun. Then my maniac self-absorbed with the Joker creature stroke again, and I read these comics that my boyfriend lent to me, and these are the continuation of Batman the White Knight, which were a series of comics that I already reviewed here on this channel, so I'm going to see if I leave it linked somewhere so you can see my thoughts on that series. And those are Batman the Curse of the White Knight. So I read issue 1, issue 2, which the covers are really cool, issue 3, issue 4, 5, which, here's the man itself. We love, we don't stand, but we are sort of obsessed with. 6, 7, which, if you've read, this has such a Count of Monte Cristo vibe, in my opinion, that I was so happy. And finally, issue 8, which is the ending of this series. I do believe that this is going to be a sort of trilogy. So you have the White Knight, then you have the Curse of the White Knight, and then you will have another one, which is not out yet, but I really want to read that one. And this is by Sean Murphy and Matt Hollingsworth. Yeah, Hollingsworth. So congrats to these two gents, because this was so fucking amazing. So of course I'm not going to spoil to you the plot of the White Knight, which I don't want to, and so I'm not going to talk about the plot of this one, but basically the plot of the White Knight, which is the first on this sort of trilogy of comic issues, is that the Joker sort of regains his sanity back, and he starts a political campaign against the Batman, because Batman is not actually the most, sane and proper person in what regards helping Gotham in the way that Gotham really needs to be helped. So he just goes and he smashes up some villains, but shit still goes on. And Jack Napier, which is sort of the double personality of the Joker and the original personality of the Joker, so the Joker was a personality that he constructed apparently, he really wants to change that. So he wants to start a political movement. He wants to talk about vigilantes, talk about the safety of the city and everything, and so Batman is sort of being a little bit discredited, and you never know, well, you know, but I'm not going to tell you if he has actually changed or if he's still the Joker. And in The Curse of the White Knight, it has to do with the follow-up of everything that happens in the end of The White Knight. So I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but I absolutely loved this series. I think that I gave each and every single one of these 5 stars, and I would have given it more if I could, because you know that I don't really believe in the Goodreads rating of 1 to 5 stars, because that left a lot to be said, and sometimes you can't bother yourself to actually write a specific review, and so you cannot tell what you really want to say. So if the ratings were a little bit different, it would be best, but I really love this, and I encourage you, if you like Batman, and even if you don't like Batman, because the plot of this is so intricate, so political, so interesting in every single way, that you should actually give it a shot, even if you don't like it, because it is a dark story and a really, really cool one at that. Then I started reading manga, and the first one that I'm going to talk about is one that I have a separate review video already for, so I'll leave it linked somewhere in there, and that is The Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umes, and this is volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3, and this is considered the perfect edition since it is a hardcover edition and it contains the entirety of the story. Just to be clear, I have a review of this, so if you want to know more about my thoughts on it, just go and watch that review. I promise it's not really as boring as it sounds like, but in my opinion, this was great. This is a book that needed to be written, although it was great for the time it was written, so 1970 something, I believe 74, I think, which has a big impactful and environmental message. It's a cool horror book, but in my opinion, it is way too long. It doesn't develop its characters as it should, and the plot is a little bit always the same. So it got a bit tiresome, but I enjoyed it. It's an enjoyable read, and I think that if you're worried about environmental questions, it's a good read. And if you're like a little bit of horror, for me, it's not a very gruesome horror, but it has some triggering parts, so be aware of that. If you want to read a classical horror manga, it's perfect. It's nice, it's really cool, it's a little bit big, but we can get over that. Then we go to the mangas that I've been reading, and the first one was actually one that I ended up reading late last night, so it was the last book that I've read for August, possibly. I do believe so. And that is The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 8 by Nagabe. And my fucking heart. I mean, the pain. The pain. I read this and I was like, bitch, why are you doing this to me? Like, I have spent 8 volumes invested in this story and now you're breaking my heart. You will see a theme in all of the books that I read that I actually like my heart being broken, but one day it will be too much suffering and I will just end up dying of all the books that I've read that have hurt me. But as I was saying, this broke my heart. This is beautiful. I have been advocating for people to read The Girl from the Other Side for a while now, and other Nagabe works possibly, even though I haven't read others. I have others in my possession, which I plan to read, which is why I read The Girl from the Other Side, because I wanted to catch up with this before starting other works of Nagabe. And oh my god, is this great. This is sort of about this place where there's an inside that's like a medieval village, and there's an outside which is like a forest filled with snow, and this is beautiful. This is like one of the only mangas which I can actually state that the fact that it is black and white helps the story even more than it would if it was colorful. And you all know probably if you've read manga that pretty much all of the manga is black and white unless it is a special edition or something like that. And sometimes it's great to see how the shadows work, but if you could see it with original coloring, it would be great. But in this case, I don't think that that will be great. I think that this is a story for black and white manga. This is sort of gothic, sort of creepy. It's actually sort of a horror-ish kind of gothic fairy tale, but not as deep and horrifying that people cannot read it. It has some trigger warnings, yes, but it's not easy to read because it's very nostalgic and makes you a little bit sad for the characters on its own, and it has beautiful and sad emotions that will obviously be explored here, but it's not hard to read from a plot point and drawing point kind of view. It's just sad. And I love it because it's perfect. And this is basically about this little girl. She was from the inside, but she woke up one day on the outside. And basically on the outside, there's creatures like this dude, and this dude is called the teacher. And basically there's a curse. So humans will start to looking like this, and then they will eventually turn into trees because they will lose all of their souls and humanity. And basically she's outside, and we don't know if she's going to be affected by the curse, and this creature is taking care of her because he still retains a little bit of his humanity, but he doesn't know who he was, and he probably had a family. So it's all very sad, but it's just so beautiful, and their relationship is so wholesome. And this book, this volume, I was like, why are you doing this to my favorite characters? Why? But it was just, and I really want the next one, and I know that it's late in production, so I'll have to wait for forever, which is nice because maybe I'll reread it. I don't know. If you haven't picked it up, I mean, what the fuck are you doing? Go get it right now. Also, in the vein of things that broke my fucking heart, we have Made in Abyss Volume 8 by Akihito Tsukushi, and do not read this if you are squirmish in any way about any type of violence that ever existed. Because it will fuck with your mind and it will hurt you so badly, and your main characters are children, which only makes it worse, okay? Also, I deeply condone violence towards any being at all, but children, I mean, Jesus Christ, it hurts so much. Made in Abyss, if you don't know, it's sort of a steampunkish sort of horror sort of manga, which there's a theme here. It's also an adventure manga. It could be called a shonen, but I think it's way too deep for that. And I'm not passing shade on shonen, even though I really, really am. But it's darker, it's deeper. It's about this community of people that live in the top of an abyss, and they sort of search the abyss for things to like trade and to eat and to live on. But basically, further you go down into the abyss, it hurts you more to come up, until there's a point that you can't really come up because you will die of wounds and you will lose all of your humanity. So our main character is Riko. She's a young girl, and one day she receives a message from her mother that did a deep dive into the end of the abyss and never came back. And that message said, I am waiting for you at the end of the abyss. And so this girl, fully knowing that she is going to die and she can never come up again to see her friends and the rest of the people that are there, she goes down there because she has felt the pull of the abyss, and she's so very fucking curious, and she wants to know who her mom is, and it's just so sad. But it's also so great, and I don't know, it hurts me. So do I recommend this? Absolutely. Do I think that everyone will enjoy it? Nope, not at all. I have seen on Goodreads, and I have seen when I talk to other people, that people think that this is too strong, that people think that this does not have a point. I do believe it has a point. I do believe it talks about the pull to the darkness, the pull to the unknown, and that some people feel it more than others. And I do believe it is a beautiful piece on love, on what remains behind you when you have to go, and on friendship. But it's also very hard, and maybe you wouldn't like to read it. I don't know, but I do, because I like to suffer. Then I went on a fucking spree, and I read Children of the Whales volume 14, well, volume 13 first, okay, then volume 14, and then volume 15, which destroyed my soul, and I died, and shit, man, I mean, it was my favorite volume of the entirety of this, which... I'm sorry for you that are wearing headphones. I didn't plan on screaming, but screaming is the only way that I can tell you how much I love this. So this is by Abby Umeda, and Abby Umeda is a great plotter and a great author, and kills me every time. But this is basically the story about these people. They live in sort of a sandboat, and the sandboat traverses the sea, and basically some of them have powers, some of them have not. The ones that have powers die really young, and the others that don't really die until they're very, very old. But basically they start being attacked by the government, and then you start like knowing a political conspiracy, and there's a government, and they want them dead, and why do they want them dead, and what's going on, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and it's so well drawn. I mean, you can see for the covers that this is beautiful, but in the inside it's even more beautiful, and the plot points of what are emotions, what is happiness, will it be better if you didn't feel as many emotions as people normally do in the real life? Is suppressing your emotions really the way to do it? I mean, what is really happiness? What is really sadness? And why do you feel it? And the connections between the people, and it's just perfect. It's perfect. I love it. And this one, we have a backstory for one of my favorite characters, which I was like, I know that his backstory is not going to be great. But I could never see this coming. I could never. I was like, bitch, why? And the fact that I don't want to spoil any of you, so if you, I don't know, I'm not going to spoil, I'm just going to say the fact that his actions are sort of explained through this does not make them better at all, but it makes me pity him so fucking much. And I was like, bitch. Why? I mean, you can see that this month destroyed my heart. This is just what I needed. Very, very recommend. Very. You will love it. Read Children of the Whales now. Then, I have finally finished Tokyo Ghoul Re and the Tokyo Ghoul series for good. This is by Suishida, and this is the 16th volume and the end of the Tokyo Ghoul thingies. And it wasn't the ending that I wanted, that 5-star ending that I was like, bitch, and I would just break everything, and I was like, this was amazing and awesome, but I understand why it ended this way, and I still gave it 4 stars because it was a great ending nevertheless. And I think that the themes that explored are still great. However, I have to say that even though Tokyo Ghoul, the first season of series, was amazing, and I have nothing to say against it, Tokyo Ghoul Re had its up and downs, was never plainly bad, but sometimes it was a bit boring, sometimes it was less enjoyable than others, and sometimes some of the characters' motivations were strange and some of the actions were really rushed. But for what I gather, the author fell a bit out of love with the series because had a lot of problems writing this, because he wouldn't stop to rest, and he actually talks about that in the epilogue of the thing. He said he just wanted to fulfill the deadlines and he wouldn't take any time at all to rest, and so this started to consume him and fell out of love with the series, and so he just wanted to finish it. And for someone with that mindset, I think the ending was great, because if you just want to get it over with, you could just have wrapped it up in any way, and he actually did an effort to bring to the fans a good ending, a sort of ending that will be satisfactory, even though it's not the best ending in the world. So I do recommend the reading of the Tokyo Ghoul first series, but if you want to read Re, get ready for it not to be as good as the first series, but it's still great, and it has a lot more focus and scientific and sort of research effects that the first one doesn't have. The first is more fantasy sci-fi thing, but the second one is more sci-fi than any other thing, and it's more research and science, which I enjoyed. And if you don't know, Tokyo Ghoul is the story of Ken Kaneki. He is this guy, and because of an unfortunate accident, he becomes half man, half ghoul in a world where ghouls are predatories. They can only eat human flesh, and so the ghouls and the humans are in a war. And basically, he has to be the one to make a bridge between them, which you see all of the aftermath of that in Tokyo Ghoul Re. And it was good, it was great. I would not advise Tokyo Ghoul Re if you don't love Tokyo Ghoul to the point of saying, I have to get more into this world, because Tokyo Ghoul Re is world building and world developing. It doesn't have a lot of character work, which is really sad. But the ones that do have a lot of character work in the Re series are really great volumes. But I mean, I digress. I enjoy it, but I understand why it was not the best, but it was still fun for me. And then finally, I have read Blood on the Tracks Volume 1 by Shuzo Oshimi, and if you don't know, Shuzo Oshimi is the author of Happiness, which is one of the manga series that is one of my favorites, and that I've all the time been saying here in the channel, like, fucking read it because it's awesome and great. So Blood on the Tracks, I haven't really figured out where this is going because I've only read one volume and the others are not out yet. But apparently this is supposed to be his more dark work, and this is about the relationship between a mother and her son. And basically this mother is sort of a bit overprotective, and she is always around her son, she's always taking care of him, but she looks really nice and a really nice person to her son, and her son loves her very, very deeply, which is very apparent in some of the actions and situations that take place. However, there's this thing in the family where they do believe that she's very overprotective and they mock her a bit for that. And what happens here is that, I don't know, there's a terrible accident one summer and shit is about to change. And this manga series is going to be dark. This first volume is the darkest thing possible to start a series. It's really weird. I don't want to spoil you because I full on believe that you should read Shuzo Oshimi's works, because he's the best at coming of age stories with a twist and with a very dark twist, because coming of age is not easy, and sometimes most of the books make it sound like between the hardships it's a very beautiful poem, and it's really not. I mean, it wasn't for me, and I'm glad that he's exploring that. But it's really terrible. There's a lot of trigger warnings. There's trigger warnings for family situations, there's trigger warnings for loss of a loved one, there's trigger warnings for death of an animal, there's blood, I don't know, it's just, there's trigger warnings for messed up relationships. So if you have problems with relationships between mothers and children, maybe do not pick this up. But if not, I recommend. I do recommend twisted shit. I know. So that's going to be it for my wrap-up, which is already very, very long. I'm sorry to keep you. If you've read any of these books or if you want to know more about them, I would advise you to go to the comments. Please don't spoil me or anyone else for any of these series that are still ongoing or any of the endings, because I'm trying to keep these a bit spoiler-free. But if you want to talk about it, just put spoiler warnings and talk about it. And that's going to be all for today. I hope that you all had a great reading month in August, and slowly I hope that 2020 will allow me to actually go back into my reading. I don't know. We'll see. So that's going to be all for today, and happy readings to you all. Bye!